Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. It's glorious and wonderful to have this amazing opportunity to share my soul energy through the vibrations of my voice with whoever is listening or watching this video. It's such an amazing and wonderful thing to think about, that I'm speaking out into the ether, into my microphone, and right now somebody else can hear my voice. And so through my voice and the vibration of my voice, I begin by sharing my love for you. And I've been contemplating on something that regularly crosses my mind. And I'd love for you to share your own experiences once you awaken to this fact. And that is, the outside world is a reflection of what is going on within your mind on a very, very subtle level. Do you look at the animals that you see around you? Do you have animals that come to your house or to your setting? And do you evaluate what's going on within you just by the animals that you see? I had a recent, very profound experience that affected me at a heart level and has made me continuously think about the nature of the universe. So we have a beautiful house. My wife is quite a green thumb. Every plant we get turns into 3. And she's constantly planting plants. We have a beautiful backyard. We decided after a while of living there that we said, hey, it'd be nice to see more birds. And we loved the birds that came by, and we started laying out bird seed, first in a bird feeder. We noticed the birds that came. So we had, after a little while, get to watching these birds because they're beautiful. We were mostly getting doves, and they would all interact. Sometimes we get little blackbirds and robins, and it was wonderful to watch the variety of different birds that came. So you would lay out another bird seed, bird feeder here and there. We started out finding out in bags and bags of bird seed, so that we were laying bird seed out on the table, and just all kinds of amazing birds would show up. Crows, everything. And it was wonderful to sit in my kitchen and look out the window and watch the different birds coming for the bird seed. It was like they were attracted to the seed. And this is how the mind works. And I want you to understand how your consciousness works. This is how it reflected back to me. So this became my daily habit and ritual. I'd be changing the water fountain in my backyard, freshening up the seed once it ran out, always making sure it was full, taking pictures and videos, and just seeing some amazing birds. We got to know these birds. They would hang out in the tree above our yard and come down for seed. Backyard became kind of glorious. We'd see an amazing squirrel, super friendly. They would come and visit. And then another squirrel. We'd see a possum. At night we'd get some raccoons, and they were a little bit scary. Sometimes we'd find a dead bird here and there. We saw a cat, and I'd start to get worried because I love my cats, but I love cats too. But I'd start to get worried about the birds with the cats that would show up, because the cats were showing up. I had a possum hide in my garage, didn't know what it was. But then every once in a while, you're sitting by the fire, this beautiful, wonderful, luscious backyard, and see a little rat run by. They were very quick, very fast. And one time I remember just looking back, and it was like they were aware of me watching, and they just slipped by, ran across. I saw 3 or 4 of them. Then we'd start to see more of them. And then we had figured out we had rats in our house. We'd hear movements right above the oven as they were going up the air duct into the attic. Rats. So we had to take care of the rats. And then my landlord said I couldn't lay out the birdseed anymore as a request, because the birdseed had attracted the rats to the backyard. So we had to get rid of all the birdseed almost instantaneously after removing the birdseed. the birds disappeared. Didn't come back even looking for it. Within hours, we never saw a single bird again. Saw the squirrels a few times, but they slowly disappeared because we had to stop feeding the birds in the backyard. And I want you to understand this is how your mind works. This is a metaphor for how my mind had worked. I was putting out seeds for thoughts. So birds represented thoughts, ideas. They would come and I would sit and watch these ideas battle with each other. These birds would sit around a large dish eating the bird seed, and then one would become dominant and go around and peck at the other birds. Some were very violent. Sometimes one bird would just never let another bird go, chasing it around everywhere. Each of these birds were ideas that were coming to me. And in your mind, it's the same way. You have different ideas battling with each other, attracted to seeds of thought that are planted, not necessarily rooted in the soil. If any of those seeds ended up in the soil around, then things would sprout up. But these ideas were attracted to the seed that I had laid out. And that seed is that open state within you. When you enter in to this complexity of intelligent infinity, this is one way the higher self communicates what's going on. When your mind creates, it's going to have its possums and its rats, and its birds, its doves and crows, each representing some aspect of yourself, because each of those birds are you. As Neville Goddard explained in Seed Time and Harvest, he cites something recorded in Leviticus where it says, "Then shall the priest command to take for him, that is to be cleansed, 2 birds alive and clean, and the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed. And for the living bird he shall take it and shall dip it in the blood of the bird that was killed. And he shall sprinkle upon him that is to be cleansed from the leprosy 7 times, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose into the open field, and he shall be clean." A literal application of this would be stupid and fruitless, while on the other hand, a psychological application of the formula is wise and fruitful. Neville tells us a bird is a symbol of an idea. Every man who has a problem or who desires to express something other than that which he is now expressing can be said to have 2 birds. These 2 birds, or conceptions, can be defined as follows. The first bird is your present, outpictured conception of yourself. It is the description which you would give if you were asked to define yourself, your physical condition, your income, your obligations, your nationality, family, race, and so on. Your sincere answer to these questions would necessarily be based solely upon the evidence of your senses and not upon any wishful thinking. This true conception of yourself, based entirely upon the evidence of your senses, defines the first bird. The second bird is defined by the answer you wish you might give in these questions of self-definition. In short, these 2 birds can be defined as that which you are conscious of being and that which you desire to be. As Neville always explained to us, this story and all the other stories of the Bible are psychological plays dramatized within the consciousness of man. And I would say from my reading these lectures, I really believe that he was also implying that beyond the Bible, that all that we experience in our life are these psychological plays dramatized for us. So you are the high priest, you are the leper, you are the birds, your consciousness or the I am is the high priest. You, the man with the problem, are the leper. The problem, your present concept of yourself, is the bird that is killed. The solution of the problem, what you desire to be, is the living bird that is freed. So after reading that, I started applying the way that Neville looked at biblical stories to my own life. and I started to see something much richer in the world around me. Recently, in an episode where I interviewed Rizwan Virk, we explored the idea that this is most likely a simulation. We may be running in a simulation over and over and over again in order to determine the answer to some other question that we're not even aware of. In order for the simulation to run perfectly, it has to run over and over and over again with a number of variables. You are within the simulation, and you can awaken within the simulation to a whole other program, and a whole other operating system. And the simulation is designed in that way to take variables and stimulate what appears to be a conscious state on a particular path. But as a result of this program, you end up sort of seeing a reflection of what's going on within you in the world around you. I didn't just have 2 birds. I had infinite numbers of birds. In chapter 13 of The Law and the Promise, a letter that Neville reads is about a woman that loves birds in particular, and she asks a question in relation to birds. In another chapter, he talks about seeing the birds as within himself. And I started to see birds on so many different levels in and around my yard. They started to be a sort of beautiful, natural reflection of different states that I would be in at different times. There was one time that I was in deep meditation with one of my own meditations, and I was meditating with everybody else. It was a group meditation that we were doing through the Reality Revolution, and I had the dove come and kiss me in the way that Neville describes in his vision. I don't think this was the actual, because I had not received the other mystical experiences prior to it, but this experience of the dove coming and kissing me was somewhat different and unique. I could see all these beautiful doves coming down, and we started to notice this amazing effect. The doves would live near our tree, and then when the heat would rise at the end of the day, as the sun was coming down, you could lay down on the ground and look up, and you'd see all these birds fly really, really high towards the sun, and they just dive down, swirling down, catching the waves of heat and air floating down. So we would just sit at the end of the day as the sun was going down, looking up at this beautiful scene of these birds just sliding down like beautiful children, enjoying the breeze, free, happy in that moment. I started to see these unusual things happening. And I started to really see a reflection of what was going on in my soul on a very subtle level, just by looking at the birds and the different animals that would show up. At night, we would see a skunk. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Almost as if somebody had brushed it. Its hair, so beautiful. And it snuck around and looked around, and it ate some of the seed too. But eventually we had to remove the seed, because we had to get rid of the rats. We had to set poison traps around, sticky boards. A couple times, it really haunted me. We'd set out a trap and the rat would be stuck on the sticky. We'd have to let the rat die. The whole affair was very troublesome to me. When I even kill a fly, it bothers me now. I have released many spiders and many critters in my house. If I find a way, I'm always going to try to figure out a way to release it away from my house. Even the gnarliest spiders. I've come to love them and communicate with the animals and the insects all around me, and they're all representative. When I see the ants, they are representative of something that's going on in me. When I see the ants are desperate during a certain period, sometimes there's a desperation in me. When I see all the different imaginings in my mind and thinking about the world and considering all the things that I've read and the ideas swimming through my mind, I could see it out pictured in the different sort of birds that would show up and eat the seed. But the point was, I had laid out the seed for the birds to come. And that is how I was able to open my consciousness in that moment. And I have these wonderful ideas that had come to me. But if you don't lay out the seed, the birds will never come. To me, you lay out the seed in consciousness when you go into meditation. And if you're not going into meditation, that's fine. The backyard simply won't have any birds. It won't have a place or space for the birds to battle it out. You might not see a skunk or rat either. But sometimes, in an effort to avoid the bad, we lose the good. Sometimes, out of fear of the very minor problem which is already resolved, and now it's an ongoing thing, I can't leave the seed out. Sometimes in our own consciousness, we become fearful of the rats that come in. And as a result, we close ourselves off to the glories and beauties of everything else. That was the message that had come to me. But I continued to see a nearby cat, a wild cat nearby. And I would look up what it means, and I'd start to see different animals, and it started to reflect different aspects of myself, even different breeds of bird. And so I'm asking you, do you walk around and look at the world around and see all these little signs, pictures, trees, businesses, movies, all of it, everything around is you trying to communicate with you? And sometimes the discord is a communication from you to yourself about some aspect that you need to heal. I suspect sometimes the crazy stuff we see in the world are by those parts of the simulation that are not conscious. They're simply a part of the simulation, there to trigger us as we move along this timeline. The more and more I experience my life, everything is definitely a simulation for me. And I want to know more about what you think about this. The stuff that's happening in the world and the stuff that's happening in my life, it's too unusual to be real. The stuff that's happening is simply not believable. I've reached that part of the book or the play where you say, yeah, that wouldn't happen. It's very unlikely. Where you kind of step out of the movie or play because you're not believing that it's real. You ever watch a show and you have that little moment where you're like, this is not very realistic, so I can't follow the story along because I don't believe it's not believable. So the simulation has to try to be believable. If it reaches a point where it's clearly a simulation, then the results that they have for the simulation are not dependable. So they're always trying to trick you into believing that it is not a simulation. And then they also are at the same time are trying to test and provide catalyst, which is the word that they're using with the law of one. And they're clearly saying in the law of one that it essentially is a game or simulation. And they use this word catalyst. And this word catalyst almost is like, for a gamer, it means a place within the game where something happens. Some stimulus that carries the game forward in its storyline. There are these certain points in the map that you go to in a game that will advance the storyline, or where you can find some magical object or whatever it is, right? Those are a standard part of a game that you might play. And so these catalysts are coming up based on the people around you all the time. Seems unlikely that there is catalyst for everybody, but there truly is. You start to talk to different people and everybody's experiencing catalyst all the time that's testing out the self in relation to others all the time. More and more, there's like a quickening where every day you're given a tiny little test of your service of yourself or others. Because every action that you take, you're serving something. But we don't realize that essentially this makes it very much like a dream. And in a dream, there's symbolism all the time. Everything is symbolic, as if it's communicating with you. And the more and more I think about what happened to me with the seed and the birds and the way that this affected my consciousness, was that reality is communicating with you. Reality is talking to you about what's going on within you. Sometimes it's not necessarily about creating a reality, because you're always constantly seeing a reflection of the reality outside of you. But there's a point at which this reality is communicating with you. It's talking to you. It's teaching you. And you can learn these lessons by looking at everything symbolically as if you are dreaming. So it could be the type of boyfriend or girlfriend that you have, or the type of movie that you're watching, or something happens in particular to someone else that tells you something about yourself. I want you to continue to look at things as if you're in a simulation and the game is talking to you. And when you do this, the world opens up to you a little bit. It becomes easier to understand and move through. For some, it might be somewhat sad to learn that you're inside of a game or simulation. For others, it's very exciting. It means that you're code that will move on no matter what. And you may be a part of a number of simulations. And the level of technology that is available means that you will live forever in such an expanded and amazing way. Because ultimately, all a computer program is, when we talk about simulations, the idea of that brings up into mind that we're in some sort of computer program. All a computer program is a tiny reflection of our own consciousness. The computer is created from our own consciousness. Everything we see is a reflection of our consciousness. So all a computer is us reflecting back the idea that we have a hard drive and we have a flash drive, and it's all about consciousness, memory, the way that it communicates with itself, and viruses come in. Everything is a reflection of your consciousness. So even the computer is a reflection. So the computer is there because it's a part of who we are. When it comes down to it, at a very complicated level, mathematically and geometrically, we are a part of a vast holographic program. And that is an amazing thing. What an amazing thing to come to that realization. And even further, you are the program in all of its facets. You're the computer running all the simulations. And within you, and it gets more and more vast, it goes on, and it's not exactly what you think it is. It's so much more, because the computer is just a very small fragment of what advanced intelligence really is. You start to get advanced intelligences that are a corroboration or conglomeration of different consciousnesses combining together, just as you experience with computers that become servers that join together. Essentially, we become servers that are joining together, and we run much faster, and we become much more advanced. That's what's happening. The technology is advancing in our world as our consciousness is expanding. At some point, we'll realize that technology was irrelevant after all. It's just an element within the simulation to pull us up to a certain understanding or level of consciousness. And I believe we go through all of these different simulations for each of our lives, experiencing eternal recurrence on each one, because if you can run it with the push of a button and it's done, there's no concept of time with the computer, because you can run the simulation so quickly over and over and over again, and seeing a result each time. Imagine if you wanted to see if two football teams and how often they play each other, and you play a simulation of a football game 100 times, one team might win 72 times, one team might win 28 times. You might be a part of a scenario that's similar to that, and you might be a part of a simulation for each incarnation that you're in, and it's all a part of who you are, and everything is happening instantaneously, and you're a part of it. And if you awaken to it, there's a point where you can start to program your own biocomputer, and you can tweak the simulation however you want. I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I am trying to awaken you to the nature of your reality. And the nature of your reality is not what you think it is. It is not what it says in science books, though it really does. When we understand quantum physics and quantum consciousness and reality, we understand, because of what we've learned in quantum physics, that we are in what would be a simulation that is constantly running different parallel programs and contains infinite potential varieties that are within the program that can then become real. And the programming code is amazing. The DNA is essentially an element of this programming code. But the universe itself is learning about itself through these simulations. What does that mean for you? It doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. It doesn't. You can completely forget about it if it's something that does not resonate with you. It may be easier to think about it as a dream. You understand, when you go to sleep, you're dreaming and you're experiencing worlds that are seemingly like a simulation. And you're not in a computer program then, you're just in your own head. So what's happening there is a dream. We enter into a dream. Someone else is dreaming us, and we're part of the dream. If that makes it easier to understand, that's fine. A simulation or a dream, whatever it is, a game or a play, there is an element to it that is pre-created. There's an element to it that is intentional in the way that reality carries out beyond just the basics. There are things happening in people's lives. Every person I talk to is the same. Everybody's experiencing these different kinds of catalysts in experiences with their family, their friends, events that happen, people they meet on the street. Constant events that are these sort of catalysts that really make you question whether or not things are real. This is an ongoing question for me because I don't know if I'm not dead. People know about the quandary that I'm within. I experienced this crazy event where somebody shot at me in a home invasion, and the bullet just bounced off my back, right? So there's a part of me that says, am I already dead? And I just couldn't deal with the fact that I died so tragically. So I've tried to answer the question, am I in a parallel reality? Because there were little things that had happened that were different. And so I have continuously traveled through every library, every bit of information, interviewed people, talked to people, and sought in a never-ending journey to discover whether or not I am truly alive or am I dead. I don't think I'll ever know. But I do know that what I'm experiencing now is not what I thought. That the world around me and the reality that I'm within is a dream simulation. And I'm within this, and I'm going to do the best I can to play through this catalyst like I'm in this game. I'm going to enjoy the game while I'm in it because I chose to play this game for some reason. I feel like there's some part of me that is pushing me along, if it's real or not. I'm going to choose love in these moments of catalysts that come to me, and I'm going to see what happens. That's all you got to do. Live in the present moment, knowing that you're creating your reality around you, that there is a reflection that you see of what's going within, and begin to try to actively change this inner state. It may be complex ideas, thousands of birds fighting amongst themselves, or it may be just a couple birds, or it could be something entirely different. But this world that you see around you is what's going on within. And what does that mean for you? What does that mean? Listen to what the reality is saying to you. Listen to what it's whispering as you look into its trees. Listen to what it's singing to you with the chirp of that bird. See the world as magical in that way. And the world will begin to change into something magical. Take this amazing knowing and enjoy it while you can. You're in a perfect simulation, and you can make it perfect from within. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. Buy my art at newearth.art. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.